The assignment, Tessa Harrison smoothed her charcoal pencil skirt as the elevator climbed to the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower. 6 weeks at Blackwell and Associates, Chicago's most prestigious architectural firm, and she still felt like an imposter. Her portfolio had earned her this junior designer position, but surviving here was another matter entirely. The elevator doors parted to reveal the sleek reception area, all glass, steel, and impossibly clean surfaces, just like the firm's reputation. Flawless, cold, precise. "Morning, Tessa," called Penny from reception. "Julian wants to see you. Conference room 3. Tessa's stomach tightened. Julian Blackwell summoning a junior designer was unusual. She deposited her messenger bag at her cubicle and headed toward the conference rooms, rehearsing professional responses to whatever might be coming. She pushed open the frosted glass door to find not only Julian, but also Nicholas Walsh, the firm's notoriously exacting design director. At 38, Walsh had already left his mark on Chicago's skyline with innovative, environmentally conscious designs that somehow managed to be both striking and commercially successful. "Ah, Tessa." Julian's voice was warm but businesslike. "Come in. You know Nicholas, of course." Walsh barely looked up from his tablet, offering only the slightest nod. His reputation preceded him. Brilliant, demanding, and completely uninterested in office politics or socializing. The divorce 3 years ago had only intensified his focus on work, according to office gossip Tessa tried to ignore. The lakefront. "Cultural Center project," Julian continued. "The client has moved up the timeline. We need fresh eyes, and your background in sustainable materials caught Nicholas's attention." This time, Walsh did look up. His gray eyes assessed her with an intensity that made Tessa straighten her posture. "Your thesis on adaptive reuse of industrial materials," he said. His voice was deeper than she expected. "It suggested approaches we might apply here." Tessa blinked in surprise. "You read my thesis?" "I read everything relevant to my projects." No smile, just statement of fact. Julian's phone buzzed. "I have to take this. Nicholas will brief you on the details." He disappeared, leaving Tessa, alone with the firm's most intimidating figure. Walsh gestured to the chair beside him rather than across the table. "The site has contamination issues from its previous industrial use. Your ideas about remediation through design rather than just mitigation might be applicable." As Tessa sat down, she caught a faint scent of cedar and coffee. Walsh pulled up renderings on his tablet, leaning closer to show her. For someone with such a frosty reputation, he radiated warmth. "The challenge is balancing the remediation with the aesthetic vision," he explained, his finger tracing a curved line on the screen. Tessa found herself drawn into the problem, their hands occasionally sharing the same space as they manipulated the 3D model. "What if we incorporated phytoremediation into the landscaping? Make the healing process part of the visitor experience?" Something shifted in Walsh's expression, a flash of genuine interest. "Show me what you mean." Tessa took the EI stylus, quickly sketching over the rendering. The concept flowed from her hand naturally, and for 15 minutes she forgot who she was talking to. When she looked up, she found Walsh watching her with unexpected appreciation. "Your approach is unorthodox," he said. Not praise exactly, but not dismissal either. Is unorthodox bad? Not if it solves the problem. He took back the stylus, his fingers brushing against hers. That brief contact, just skin against skin for a fraction of a second, shouldn't have registered at all. Yet Tessa felt a distinct jolt, like static electricity, but warmer. Walsh seemed to freeze momentarily too, but recovered with practiced composure. "I'll expect you in my office tomorrow morning, 7:30. We'll develop this further." He stood, gathering his materials with efficient movements. "And Ms. Harrison, don't bring coffee. The stuff from the break room is undrinkable. I'll have proper coffee waiting." As he left, Tessa remained seated. trying to process what had just happened. Not just the unexpected assignment or the brief moment their hands had touched, but the subtle shift she'd witnessed. How Nicholas Walsh had gone from referring to my project to, "We'll develop this." 6 weeks at Blackwell and Associates, and suddenly she was working directly with the firm's brilliant, aloof design director on their most prestigious project. Tessa gathered her notes, wondering if she'd imagined that momentary connection or if it truly signaled the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated. Stolen moments. For 3 weeks, Tessa Harrison's life revolved around the Lakefront Cultural Center project and, by extension, Nicholas Walsh. Their 7:30 a.m. meetings had become a ritual, premium coffee waiting, Nicholas already deep in work when she arrived, the early morning light casting long shadows across his minimalist office. The client rejected the living wall concept, Nicholas announced one morning, frustration evident in the tightness around his eyes. Too maintenance-heavy? Tessa sipped her coffee, dark roast with a hint of cardamom that Nicholas special ordered from some small batch roaster. We could integrate photovoltaic glass in those sections instead. Similar visual impact, added sustainability points, zero maintenance. Nicholas looked up, the early sunlight catching the silver at his temples. Show me. This had become their pattern, problem, suggestion, collaboration. Tessa sketching rapidly, while Nicholas watched with that focused intensity that made her simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. Today, as she leaned over his desk to adjust a drawing, her arm brushed against his shoulder. "Sorry," she murmured, not moving away immediately. "It's fine," he replied, his voice lower than usual. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. The office. Around them disappeared. No ringing phones, no deadlines, just the strange humming awareness between them. Nicholas cleared his throat and shifted away first. The integration points need work. The moment passed, but others followed. A shared elevator ride where they stood closer than necessary. Working late, Nicholas loosening his tie, revealing the hollow of his throat. Tessa catching him watching her during a client presentation, his expression unreadable. "You and Walsh seem to be getting along," remarked Daniela, a fellow junior designer, over lunch in the firm's sleek break room. "It's professional," Tessa replied too quickly. "He's brilliant but demanding." Daniela raised an eyebrow. "Just be careful. Clara in accounting dated a senior partner last year. When it ended, so did her career here." "There's nothing to be careful about," Tessa insisted, ignoring the flutter in her stomach when she spotted Nicholas across the room, declining to join the partner's lunch table to work alone instead. The next day, Julian Blackwell stopped by Nicholas's office during their morning meeting. "The sustainability focus is exactly what the client wanted," he said, reviewing their latest renderings. "Whatever you two are doing, it's working." He clapped Nicholas on the shoulder. "Haven't seen you this invested in a project since before the Elizabeth situation." After Julian left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. "Elizabeth was my wife," Nicholas said finally, not looking at Tessa. "Ex-wife." "You don't need to explain." "I know." He finally met her eyes. "But I want to." That evening, they found themselves alone in the office, the Chicago skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. What began as late work on project revisions transformed when Nicholas actually answered Tessa's casual question about his start in architecture. "My father built houses," he explained, surprising her with this personal detail. "Nothing fancy, practical, middle-class homes. But he taught me to respect how spaces shape lives." One story led to another. Nicholas's divorce. A relationship sacrificed to career ambition. Tessa's struggle to be taken seriously as a young female designer. Hours passed unnoticed. "It's almost midnight," Tessa said finally, gathering her sketches. Nicholas walked her to the elevator, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You have remarkable talent, Tessa. I don't say that lightly." "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "I've learned more from you in 3 weeks than in 4 years of school." The elevator arrived, but neither moved. In the distorted reflection of the brushed steel doors, they looked like a single silhouette. "We should both get some rest," Nicholas said, his voice rough at the edges. As Tessa stepped into the elevator, their hands brushed again, this time not by accident. His fingers curled briefly around hers, a touch so fleeting she might have imagined it, except for the unmistakable expression in his eyes. The doors closed between them, but something had irrevocably opened. Tessa leaned against the elevator wall, her heart racing as she descended 42 floors, wondering how professional admiration had evolved into this dangerous attraction, and how long they could pretend it was anything else. 2 days later, the project team celebrated clearing, a major regulatory hurdle. In the crowded restaurant, Tessa found herself seated next to Nicholas. Under the table, their knees touched. Neither moved away. Later, sharing a cab to drop her at her apartment first, the city lights played across his features as he looked at her. "This is complicated," he said softly. "I know." Tessa's fingers rested on the seat between them, inches from his. "The firm's non-fraternization policy is very clear." "Very clear," he agreed, yet his hand moved closer to hers. When the cab stopped at her building, Nicholas walked her to the entrance. Standing in the shadow of the awning, protected from view, he finally reached out, his fingers tracing a path from her wrist to her shoulder. "Good night, Tessa," he whispered, his touch conveying everything they couldn't say aloud. As she watched the cab drive away, Tessa knew they were balanced on a dangerous edge. Every professional success on the project pulled them closer together. Every shared idea creating an intimacy that had nothing to do with physical proximity, and yet made their rare touches exponentially more powerful. The line drawn. The quarterly review meeting fell on a rainy Tuesday in October. Blackwell and Associates conference room buzzed with partners and project leads presenting updates on active projects. Tessa sat near the back, watching Nicholas deliver a concise overview of the Lakefront Cultural Center's progress. The innovative remediation approach Ms. Harrison developed has saved approximately $800,000 in site preparation costs, Nicholas noted, nodding toward Tessa. Several heads turned her way, including Julian Blackwell's. Being singled out for praise by Nicholas Walsh, known for his reluctance to compliment anyone, drew attention. Tessa maintained a professional smile, even as she felt heat rise in her cheeks. After the meeting, Julian caught her in the hallway. "Impressive work, Tessa. Walsh doesn't champion ideas unless they're exceptional." "Thank you, sir. It's been a valuable learning experience." Julian's expression turned thoughtful. "Nicholas seems different lately, more engaged, less..." He searched for the word, isolated. Before Tessa could respond, Monica Reynolds, HR, director, approached. "Julian, I need a moment regarding the partner retreat logistics." As they walked away, Monica glanced back at Tessa with an assessing look that made her uncomfortably aware of the rumors that might be circulating. Had someone noticed the lingering glances, the way she and Nicholas gravitated toward each other in meetings, how their hands sometimes found reasons to connect when passing documents? That afternoon, an email arrived from HR requesting Tessa's presence for a routine junior associate check-in the following morning. Her stomach tightened. Nothing about it seemed routine. Nicholas texted her that evening, a rare occurrence, ostensibly about project details, need to discuss the sustainable material supplier options. "Available to meet early tomorrow, their usual code for their morning meetings?" Tessa replied affirmatively, trying to ignore her growing anxiety. When she arrived at his office the next morning, Nicholas closed the door. Another rarity. HR wants. To meet with me, she said before he could speak. Nicholas's expression tightened. Monica came to see me yesterday. About us? About perceptions. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomfort. Nothing specific, just a friendly reminder about the firm's policies regarding supervisory relationships. Tessa sank into a chair. So they know. They suspect. Nicholas remained standing, maintaining distance between them. Which means others do too. The weight of what was at stake hit Tessa fully. Her career was just beginning, her reputation still forming. For Nicholas, decades of professional respect were on the line. We've been careful, she said. Not careful enough. His voice softened. Tessa, I can't be the reason your career gets derailed before it truly begins. That's my risk to assess. No. Nicholas's tone was final. I've been in this industry long enough to know how this goes. Women always pay a higher price in these situations. So what are you saying? Nicholas turned to look out at the Chicago skyline, his profile sharp against the gray sky. I'm saying we need to establish clearer boundaries, professional only. I've requested Julian to bring in Vanessa Chen to co-lead the project with me. You're removing me? Tessa stood, anger flaring. No, restructuring the team, creating a buffer. He turned back to her. It's for your protection. Don't pretend this is about protecting me, Tessa said, keeping her voice low despite her rising emotion. This is about protecting yourself. Something flashed in Nicholas's eyes, pain, perhaps, or regret. Perhaps you're right. Self-preservation is a hard habit to break. The HR meeting was exactly what Tessa feared, ostensibly casual questions. About team dynamics, workload, and mentorship that circled the real issue like vultures. Monica Reynolds watched her responses with calculating eyes, noting how often Tessa mentioned Nicholas's name, how she described their working relationship. Some of our senior staff have remarked on how closely you and Mr. Walsh collaborate, Monica said finally. He's demanding but fair, Tessa replied, maintaining steady eye contact. I'm learning a great deal. I'm sure you are. Monica's smile didn't reach her eyes. Just remember that Blackwell and Associates values clear professional boundaries. They protect everyone involved. The message was unmistakable. The next day, Vanessa Chen joined their project meetings, her presence a constant reminder of the invisible line now drawn between Tessa and Nicholas. In the weeks that followed, they maintained scrupulous professionalism. No early morning meetings, no late nights alone in the office, no accidental touches. The project continued advancing, but something vital had been lost. Tessa found herself missing not just the tentative intimacy they'd shared, but the creative synergy, the intellectual partnership that had made the work itself so exhilarating. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows, Tessa worked late, finalizing presentation materials. Most of the office had emptied when Nicholas appeared at her cubicle. You should go home, he said, his voice carefully neutral. It's getting late. Tessa looked up at him, noting the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. I'm almost finished. Nicholas glanced around the empty office, then back to her. Tessa, He stopped, visibly pulling back whatever he had been about to say. The presentation looks good. Get some rest. As he walked away, Tessa felt the distance between them like a physical ache. They were doing everything right, following every rule, and it felt completely wrong. Breaking point. The Lakefront Cultural Center model dominated the center of the conference room, a miniature masterpiece of innovation and sustainability. Around it gathered city officials, investors, and the Blackwell and Associates team for the final presentation before construction approval. Tessa stood to the side, watching Nicholas and Vanessa Chen lead the presentation. 8 weeks had passed since the boundaries had been firmly redrawn between her and Nicholas. 8 weeks of polite, distant collaboration. The project had progressed, but the spark, both creative and personal, had dimmed to embers. The integration of remediation into the visitor experience remains the project's most distinctive feature, Nicholas was saying, gesturing to the section Tessa had originally conceptualized. This approach transformed an environmental liability into an educational asset. A city council member raised concerns about long-term maintenance costs. Vanessa began addressing the question with standard reassurances, but Tessa saw Nicholas glance her way, a silent question in his eyes. She knew exactly what he was asking. They had discussed this potential objection months ago, developing a more innovative response than what Vanessa was offering. Without thinking, Tessa stepped forward. "If I may," she interjected, moving to the model. "The maintenance concern is precisely why we developed this integrated approach." She highlighted specific elements, explaining the self-sustaining systems built into the design. The council member nodded, clearly impressed. Julian Blackwell looked pleased, while Vanessa's expression tightened slightly at being upstaged. Nicholas's face remained impassive, but his eyes followed Tessa as she returned to her position. After the presentation, which concluded with unanimous approval to proceed, Julian gathered the team. "Exceptional work, everyone. We're celebrating tonight. Dinner at Gibson's, 7 o'clock. Attendance is not optional." His gaze lingered meaningfully on Nicholas, known for skipping such events. At Gibson's, the team occupied a private dining room, the atmosphere buoyant with success. Tessa found herself seated across from Nicholas, the first time they'd been positioned face-to-face in weeks. Throughout dinner, their eyes met briefly between conversations with others, each glance an echo of what had been lost. As the evening progressed, the group splintered into smaller conversations. Julian pulled Nicholas aside to discuss the project's next phase, while Tessa found herself cornered by Monica Reynolds. "The presentation was quite impressive," Monica said, swirling her wine. "You've established yourself as a valuable team member." "Thank you," Tessa replied cautiously. "I hope our previous conversation was helpful in clarifying expectations." Monica's smile was thin. "I noticed you and Nicholas have maintained a more appropriate distance recently." Tessa felt a flash of indignation. "We've always maintained professional boundaries." "Of course," Monica's tone suggested otherwise. "Still, it's worth remembering that in this industry, perceptions matter as much as reality, especially for young women looking to advance." The implied threat was clear. Continue proving the rumors wrong, or watch your career opportunities vanish. Before Tessa could respond, Julian announced it was time for a toast. "To the Lakefront Cultural Center," he declared, raising his glass. "And to the remarkable team that made it possible. Nicholas, your leadership on this project marks a new chapter for the firm." All eyes turned to Nicholas, who stood with reluctance. "The success belongs to the entire team," he said, his gaze briefly meeting Tessa's. "Particularly to those who brought fresh perspectives that challenged conventional approaches." After the toast, Tessa slipped away to the restaurant's terrace for a moment of air. Chicago's skyline glittered before her, buildings she had once dreamed of helping design. Now she was doing exactly that. At what cost? "Mind some company?" Nicholas's voice came from behind her. Tessa didn't turn. Probably not wise given Monica's watchful eye. Nicholas moved to stand beside her at the railing, careful to maintain a respectable distance. "I've been offered to lead the firm's new sustainable design division," he said after a moment. "It would mean relocating to the San Francisco office." The news hit Tessa with unexpected force. "When?" "January. It's a significant opportunity." "You should take it," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Nicholas turned toward her. "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter." Tessa finally looked at him directly. "We've made that abundantly clear, haven't we?" "Tessa, no." She cut him off, months of suppressed emotion finally surfacing. "We decided You decided that appearances and policies matter more than whatever was happening between us. You chose the safe path. I was trying to protect your career, Nicholas said, his composure slipping. By putting Vanessa between us? By pretending we're just colleagues who occasionally share oxygen? Tessa shook her head. That wasn't protection. It was avoidance. Nicholas moved closer, lowering his voice. Do you think this has been easy for me? Seeing you every day, working together, pretending I don't... He stopped abruptly. Pretending. You don't what? Tessa challenged. Before he could answer, the terrace door opened, and Julian appeared. There you are. Nicholas, the clients are asking for you. The moment shattered. Nicholas straightened, professional mask falling back into place. Of course. As he turned to leave, his hand brushed against Tessa's on the railing, the first contact in weeks. Just like that first touch months ago, it sent a current through her that contradicted every boundary they'd established. Julian lingered after Nicholas left. Everything all right, Tessa? She forced a smile. Just needed some air. Julian studied her for a moment. You know, I've worked with Nicholas for 15 years. Since the divorce, he's been detached, brilliant but removed, until this project. He paused meaningfully. Until you joined the team. Tessa remained silent, unsure where this was leading. The firm has policies for good reasons, Julian continued. But policies don't account for exceptions. He glanced back toward the door. Sometimes the most innovative designs require breaking conventional rules. With that cryptic statement, he returned inside, leaving Tessa alone with the realization that their careful performance had fooled no one, and the question of what that meant for both their futures. Redesigned. Future. 3 days after the successful presentation, Tessa arrived at work to find an email from Julian Blackwell requesting her presence in his office at 9. Her first thought was that Monica Reynolds had finally convinced him to take action regarding her and Nicholas, despite their scrupulous adherence to boundaries since that HR conversation. She spent the morning reviewing her options. At 26, starting over at another firm would be challenging, but not impossible. Her portfolio was stronger now, with the Lakefront project as a centerpiece. She could move to another city. Not San Francisco, certainly not where Nicholas was headed, perhaps Boston or Seattle. At precisely 9, she knocked on Julian's door. Come in, Tessa, he called. To her surprise, Nicholas was already there, seated across from Julian, his expression unreadable. Please sit down. Julian gestured to the chair beside Nicholas, not the arrangement she would have expected for a termination meeting. I'll be direct, Julian began once she was seated. The Sustainable Design Division we're launching in San Francisco needs strong leadership and innovative thinking. Nicholas has agreed to head the division, and we're building a team around him. He slid a folder across the desk to Tessa. We'd like you to be part of that team. Tessa stared at the folder without opening it. You want me to transfer to San Francisco? As a project architect, not a junior designer, Julian clarified. A significant promotion based on your contributions to the Lakefront project. She glanced at Nicholas, who remained silent, his eyes on Julian. I'm confused, Tessa admitted. Given the firm's policies about supervisory relationships, Julian leaned back in his chair. Yes, about that. The policy exists to prevent abuse of power and favoritism. However, in the new division structure, you would report directly to Vanessa Chen, who will be the department director. Nicholas, as division head, would be one level removed from your direct supervision. The careful reorganization was obvious, a technical workaround to the policy that had kept them apart. This feels convenient, Tessa said carefully. Julian smiled slightly. Organizational restructuring often is. The question is whether you're interested in the opportunity. May I have some time to consider it? Of course. Take the day. Julian stood, signaling the meeting's end. I have another appointment, but Nicholas can answer any questions about the San Francisco operation. As Julian left, closing the door behind him, Tessa turned to Nicholas. Did you arrange this? No. Nicholas finally met her eyes. Julian approached me yesterday. It seems our attempt at discretion wasn't as successful as we thought. So this is what? A corporate blessing to pursue whatever this is between us? Nicholas sighed, his professional reserve finally dropping. This is Julian acknowledging reality, while protecting the firm. Whether we take it as permission to explore personal possibilities is entirely separate. Tessa opened the folder, scanning the details of the position being offered. The salary and responsibilities represented exactly the career advancement she had worked toward. And if I decline? Then you decline. Your position here remains secure. Nicholas hesitated before adding, and I would still go to San Francisco. The weight of the decision pressed on Tessa. I need that time to think. Instead of returning to her desk, Tessa left the building, walking aimlessly through the downtown streets. The opportunity was exceptional, professionally, but personally, it meant acknowledging whatever had been growing between her and Nicholas since that first accidental touch months ago. By evening, she found herself at the lakefront site where their cultural center would eventually stand. Currently just an empty expanse of former industrial land, it held the promise of transformation, much like the crossroads she now faced. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas. Where are you? She hesitated, then replied with her location. 20 minutes later, his car pulled up. He approached slowly, as if giving her space to send him away. I haven't decided yet, Tessa said, as he reached her. I know. Nicholas stood beside her, both of them looking out over the site. I didn't come to pressure you. The setting sun cast long shadows across the empty land, painting everything in warm, golden light. In this liminal space between day and night, the professional facades they'd maintained seemed absurd. Why did you really put those boundaries between us? Tessa asked. The truth this time. Nicholas was quiet for a long moment. Because I recognized something happening that I wasn't prepared for. After Elizabeth left, I convinced myself that work was enough. Then you walked into that conference room with your unorthodox ideas and complete disregard for hierarchy, and suddenly, he shook his head, suddenly work wasn't enough anymore. So you pushed me away. I tried to do the right thing. For your career, yes, but also because I was afraid. Tessa turned to face him fully. Afraid of what? Of caring about something more than I care about architecture. Nicholas finally looked at her, vulnerability evident in his expression. Of caring about someone. The admission hung between them, more significant than any touch they had shared or avoided. I don't want to move to San Francisco because of some corporate loophole, Tessa said finally. That's no basis for anything real. No, it isn't, Nicholas agreed. But what if you move to San Francisco because it's an exceptional professional opportunity? And what if, separately, we acknowledge that there's something between us worth exploring, without workplace complications? That's still a lot of what-ifs. Nicholas nodded. I know. But for the first time in years, I find myself willing to risk certainty for possibility. He tentatively reached for her hand. Whatever you decide about the position, I need you. To know that meeting you changed something fundamental for me. You reminded me that buildings aren't the only structures worth investing in. Tessa looked down at their joined hands, then back to his face. In the fading light, she could see not just the distinguished design director, but the man who had gradually revealed himself during their early morning coffee talks and late-night work sessions. Complex, guarded, but capable of profound connection. I need to make this decision for the right reasons, she said. Not for you, not for us, but for my career. I would expect nothing less. 3 weeks later, Tessa stood in her emptied Chicago apartment, the last boxes packed for shipping. On her coffee table lay 2 architectural magazines featuring the Lakefront Cultural Center's groundbreaking design, both highlighting her contribution to the remediation concept. Her phone rang, Nicholas calling from San Francisco, where he'd been setting up the new division. "The team is coming together," he told her. "Vanessa is actually proving to be a surprisingly effective director." "Good," Tessa replied, looking around at the bare walls that had been her home, "because I'll be working with her closely." There was a pause on the line. "Then you're accepting the position?" "I am, because it's the right next step professionally." "And personally?" Nicholas asked, his voice carefully neutral. Tessa smiled, thinking of Julian's parting words when she'd finally given him her decision. Sometimes the most meaningful structures begin with breaking conventional patterns. "Personally," she replied, "I think we have a chance to design something neither of us anticipated, something that doesn't follow the standard blueprint." "I'd like that," Nicholas said, the smile evident in his voice. "When do you arrive?" "Sunday." "And Nicholas." "Yes?" "This time, when our hands touch, let's not pretend it doesn't matter." As Tessa ended the call, she looked out at the Chicago skyline one last time. The buildings stood as testaments to human imagination and the courage to transform empty space into something meaningful. Just as she and Nicholas now had the chance to transform their accidental connection into something intentional and lasting, not despite the boundaries they had navigated, but because they had learned what was truly worth preserving and what could be beautifully redesigned.